What's up, Tea Tribe? Welcome, welcome, welcome to Chop It Up with Tea or Talk About It Tuesday. Before I get into the video, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for the views on the last week's Talk About It Tuesday for episode one of the Cult of the Real Housewives. I really appreciate that. I just started recording again not too long ago, and so that's a lot of views for me. So I am very grateful. I also have four new subscribers, which, is amazing. So thank you for that. Um, but yeah, I appreciate the views, although I realize they probably click on it because it's the Real Housewives content. It's a huge franchise on Bravo, wildly popular. But I also have to give the biggest virtual hugs and thanks for nearly 800 views on this 2-minute snippet of me directing the children's choir and a snippet of me leading a song on High Praise Sunday, as it's called. I was going down memory lane while thinking about doing this episode today, and the thought came to me to just go ahead and post this to show everybody that I can really relate to a lot of aspects of this story. I was really about that sanctified church life, for about roughly 20 years. I wasn't in a cult, although many people just think that, that type of charismatic lifestyle is a cult. And I do understand why it appears that way because I can relate to some of the controlling aspects, um, the insulated culture of an apostolic church. I can relate to that, and it can make it appear cult like because, you really stick together. You're taught to stick together and, not be of the world, not socialize with people who were not sanctified pretty much, and you try to get everybody you care about or like to come to church, because you wouldn't really be able to associate with them if they were not believers in, the Pentecostal or apostolic life. But the top winner of the I Appreciate You award goes to the 28 likes. I think it's 28 likes. I don't have the screenshot in front of me while I'm recording the audio. I'm gonna insert the snippets over it, but that generates engagement, which allows the almighty algorithm to push our videos out more so people see them. So thank you to everyone for that engagement, everyone who took the time to stop on my video, watch it, and then go that extra step of liking it. Thank you so much. So just to dive right in, guys, there is so much to unpack with this story. I really struggle to even know where to start because it's just too much to tell. But if you are drawn to Mary's story because you are or have been in a Pentecostal or apostolic church, a charismatic lifestyle, I understand you being drawn to it for that reason because that made me curious about this. I don't watch The Real Housewives of Salt Lake. I have never watched it, and so and I don't really have a desire to watch it, but it just made me want to find out more about her story when it came across my timeline. So I just realized I did forget to say after my thank yous, if you have not subscribed, please subscribe, like this video, leave a comment. All of that engagement is going to help me, and I will continue, to hone my craft and be consistent with at least a minimum of 2 videos for now every week. I want to do much more. I want to go live and do some other things, but I at least want to stay consistent with at least 2 videos a week, sometimes faceless videos, sometimes on camera. But back to the subject at hand. I'm not trying to be too long. I just want to hit the high points. I do recommend it. This is a review. Let's talk about it Tuesday review. And so I do recommend it, especially, like I said, if you are in or have been in a charismatic apostolic or Pentecostal church, which Pentecostal and apostolic is like the same thing. So I'm going to start with Mama. Now, Mama is Mary's grandma. She pretty much raised her. Mary was estranged from her mother, and we'll get to her mother at the end. Please believe me. Her mom makes it, worth watching just to see, especially, everybody likes a little drama, but I mean, it's sad to see what happened along the way, but it's compelling and gripping. Like it makes you want to watch it. Like it's definitely not boring. So I definitely give it 5 stars as far as, holding your attention and being worth the watch, like on a weekend with a snack when you're not doing anything, if it's cold or raining or whatever. It's a good watch. So, okay. So, Mama, she raised Mary and her sister. She had 4 kids. And she had two adopted sons, and I'll get to them a little later. But she raised her daughters. Mama raised her daughter's kids as her own. So there came a time where Mama felt like she was called to go to Utah, and I'm trying to get the high points, so I don't want to go too fast, but I'm kind of skipping through. So she decided that she was called to move to Utah, and they tell the story in the documentary of how Mama walked, hitchhiked, and caught the bus to get there because she felt that God was calling her to Utah, that there was a ministry there for her, where people needed her. So she got a house. She started a church in her house, which again is not an uncommon thing. The church where I was baptized back in, I want to say 1997, it was an apostolic church, and the history of the church was that church was started in, it was founded in the living room of one of the saints, the one who felt called to start the church, and so it grew from there. And I stayed at that church for about 10 or 11 years, somewhere in there, and then I went to one of our sister churches and stayed there. No, I'm wrong. It was probably closer to 15 at the home church, and then about 5 or so at the second sister church. But um, so that's not an uncommon thing, in the charismatic church, to start a church at your house, and then go from there and to grow the church. And so after Mama started the church in her house, her goal was to, of course, to get, an actual church. But she still would go back and forth to tent meetings in Indiana, where she was from. I did mention that earlier, but I put the slide in there. It's from Indianapolis to Salt Lake City. And so she would still go back and forth for these tent meetings. And on one of those trips, she came back with Robert, who ended up being her husband. But now, Mama was a Jew Christian. She wasn't about any funny business. She looked at herself as the mother to the saints. And so we don't really get the whole backstory on why she brought him back. Like, what was his backstory? They didn't really get into that, but they said that, she brought him back and put him in a guest room. It was no funny business, but everybody else could tell that he had a thing for Mama. Mama didn't see it because he was like 20 years younger than her. But, eventually, obviously, he won her over and they got married. And when Mama married Robert, Mary was 3 years old and he was 22. Now, her adopted brother talked about, and one of her cousins talked about a little backstory about their experience with Robert growing up, after they were married. So it just seems like everything that everyone had to say about Mama and Robert, that Mama was a genuine person. They said it really seemed like Robert loved Mama and would do anything for her. Even her best friend, she was 95 years old at the time of this taping, and I believe they taped this at the end of 2024. And she said that if Robert didn't truly love Mama, that he really fooled her, because it seemed like, he really loved Mama. And so, but so the cousin and Mama's adopted son talked about how Robert started having these brotherhood meetings on the weekends with all the young boys and everything at the church to make them men. They were in the military, and this was supposed to toughen them up, but they said it started becoming abusive. And Robert's cousin, when he was talking about how they would make them do these harsh exercises, and if you couldn't do push-ups and stuff like that, you would get beaten. And when he talked about how they would put nails up under where your knees would be, and if you were doing like a push-up or something like that, if you fell or couldn't do as many as they told you to do, you're going to fall down on these pins or these nails or what have you. And he got a little choked up. Like there was like a pause, and you could tell he was trying not to cry. He was kind of looking up, like, I'm not about to cry on here, but you could tell all of these years later, this big, fully grown, masculine presenting man, that emotion, that trauma was still very much on the surface. It was still really real for him. And then the adopted son talked about how they would make them hold their arms out beside them and hold books, until the point where you couldn't take it anymore. And it was just traumatizing. And then he talked about how eventually his younger brother, because Mama adopted two brothers, they were brothers, and he said one day that his little brother just told everything to Mama, and that when Mama found out about it, that she looked really crushed. And he had said, the adopted son had said how the reason why he never told and why the cousin never told, because they felt like it would really crush her and really break her heart. And so they felt like they were taking one for the team, because everybody loved this woman. Like, everybody loved her and said she was just a genuine good person. And so the brother told everything that was going on, and then Mama confronted Robert, asked him, was it true? And he said, well, no, I'm just trying to make them a man, yada yada. And then Mama told them that he told him these meetings were done, and so she stopped that. But they stayed together, and that's kind of how the church is. You don't just get divorced. It's like you kind of look at it like, okay, well, that's between him and God. God's going to deal with his heart. They kind of look at it like, you didn't know any better or whatever, or maybe that was from some of your wounds or something. And you know what I mean? Like, so you're not going to just give up on your marriage. You're going to help bring them, to the right way. So let's move on back to Mary. So uh, there were, these guys, they grew up together. And they both were talking about how Mary was a troublemaker coming up. She was a bully. They share stories, about her always being materialistic and wanting money and just causing trouble and hanging with bad boys. And that it was just to the point where it kind of became like a draw line in the sand with Mama. And, they said she would run away. And then, Mama's calling, different people to go and look for her. She ran off again, go find Mary. And eventually, Mama couldn't tolerate Mary bringing shame on the ministry, which again, as being part of that type of lifestyle for so long, that is a very real thing. That you do not bring shame on the church, especially if you're part of the first family, the leadership in the church, if you're a part of that, or if your parents may not be related to the first family, but they hold high position, they're an elder, or a deacon, or they work for the church in some capacity, or lead an auxiliary. You have to live a sinless life. You can't do things that are going to have people speaking bad about you in the streets and let it get back to the church. So Mama disfellowshipped Mary from the church. Now, somebody in this documentary said to them, disfellowship meant you can still come and sit in the service, but you can't participate in anything. Now, in the apostolic lifestyle that I had, the church that I went to, both of those churches, you would be, that's what we call back then, or they, I don't know if they still call it that, but you're sat down. You're still a member, you're recognized as a member, but you are sat down, meaning your sins have been so egregious that there needs to be a period of repentance, and there you just you can be removed from that whenever God moves on, the pastor or the bishop's heart, that you are truly, repentant and all of that. But this fellowship, when I was in church, man, you are not coming to sit in the service. You're literally not welcome at the church if you're disfellowship. But she was still allowed to go to the church, but she wasn't, able to participate in anything. But while Mary was disfellowship from the church, Mama passed away. And honestly, for me, this is when Mary just, if there is, a thing as evil or wicked, you know, demonic even, just to have the nerve not to just decide to marry the man who lay with her grandmother for, however many years, who this man watched Mary grow up from the age of 3 years old, not only to do that, but to lie on the woman and to tell the world on the Real Housewives that it was her mother's, her mama's. It was in her will, it was her dying wish that if anything happened to her, that Mary was supposed to marry Robert, her grandpa, and inherit the church and all of her businesses and everything. But she was literally disfellowship from the church when that woman died. I just think that is just another level of, you just wonder, was this some get back at Mama for disfellowship at her to step in? Next thing you know, she's directing the choir, and they said that Robert was putting her in all these high positions over all the elders who've been there for years. It's just wild. It is just really, really wild. And not to mention the fact that Mary already had a husband. I can't tell it all. Like I said, go ahead and watch it. But she got rid of that man. Telling that story, how they systematically did that, would make this video much longer than I want. But just know that she got rid of her husband, divorced him, and 19 days after she divorced him, she married her grandpa. So, you know, before they got married. Now this is the closeout right here, y'all. This is the closeout. As they would say in the church, I'm as I close, I'm bringing it to a close. If you've been in church, you know what I mean. Um, Before they got married, there were rumors and whispers and murmurings about what they were planning to do, and it got back to Mary's mom. So there was a walkout service, and Mary's mom came to the church with her crew, and she walked up into that church and went to that pulpit and snatched that mic. And when I tell you, she stood there in her mama's pulpit and told them all what Robert was doing with Mary is not of God. She read them up one side and down the other. I mean, I could feel her, what was happening. Like, this is sick what you doing on my mama's name. On my mama's name. You are literally saying that this is what my mom wanted, and it is not of God. And so after that, she kind of got the spirit right there and was jumping up and down. I wish that I could have showed you the recording because it's more powerful. Watch it. It's very, very old footage. So, the screenshots are not the best. So I apologize. But her people started marching down the aisle, y'all. And it was just HE double hockey sticks broke out in this sanctuary. These screenshots just really, really do not do it justice. The scene was quite extremely dramatic, y'all. I mean, I've seen some church drama now. I've seen people like go to blows in the church. I'm talking about people who I consider saved and sanctified and filled with the Holy Ghost. But this got so out of hand that the cops were called to break it up. And when Mary's mom walked out, half the church walked out with her. It was absolutely scandalous, y'all. It was scandalous. It's just crazy to watch this lady sit up on this show, and because they have clips from the show, uh, showing Mary saying different things, like I said, saying that this is what her grandmother would have wanted and all of that. um and it just blows my mind. But that episode kind of ends on that note for the most part. The third and final episode had my jaw dropping out, so I'm gonna do that review next week. I may just come on camera and kind of react to it a little more. Of course, it'll just be screenshots. You can't play none of this. This is HBO Max documentary. I'm not fooling with none of that. I'm not playing none of that. But I'll get on camera and react a little bit to it. I think it'll be easier for me to, bring it to life for y'all that way. So just know these people are sick, deranged, and very abusive, manipulative, just everything. So I'm at about 21 minutes. I wanted to be more around 15, but if you made it this far and haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and subscribe. I love you guys so much for watching, for whatever the reason you click on it, however long you click on the video, it is appreciated. I'm just here to have fun and just do something different. This really isn't the type of content that I used to do in the past. But I'm just trying to, make new internet friends. I call myself Auntie T now. So if you're looking for an internet auntie, you want to be a niece or a nephew, go ahead and join the T Tribe. Subscribe. I'm going to try and keep you guys entertained. And so with that being said, I'm going to go on and end this. And I'm trying to think of something clever to say at the end. I said the last time I said, be kind to yourself and each other. And I do like that. But I think that's what Springer used to say at the end of his episodes. So I need to come up with something a little more original. But in all seriousness, there's so much going on in the world. Y'all live in the Twin Cities. And I'm not going to say too much more about that on this video. But, send me all the positive love and light. If you pray, go ahead. I don't tell people to pray for me. I would never tell anybody that. If you meditate, you want to send me some love and light, me and my family, we are here in the thick of it, and it's really real and more than you guys can imagine that you see on the news. So, y'all take care. Until next time. Oh, Think About It Thursday. I'll be doing a Think About It Thursday. So look for that. Or if you're just interested in the last episode of this, check me out next Tuesday. Until next time, peace.